Welcome to our discussion on the importance of the Union of Equality. And I was asked, first of all, my name is Marc, or Angel. I'm a member of the European Parliament from Luxembourg, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Social Affairs Committee and Employment Committee, but I'm also very active in where I work a lot on disability issues. I'm a feminist, and I also am the co-chair of the Eglitis group in the European Parliament, a group of 157 MEPs who try to push LGBTI rights and fight against discrimination in our member states and in our union. And I follow very closely the Union of Equality. And we have two wonderful guests with us. I'll start with the young lady next to me, Viktória Radványi. She's an activist, and I thought it's interesting here to debate equality on one side with politicians like Gatis and myself, and Viktória, who is an activist. She's the president of Budapest Pride. And Budapest Pride is not only organizing the Pride in Budapest, but it's really an active LGBTI association. But she will tell us more about it, and it's very difficult in that context, where in a country where women's rights, LGBTI rights, and other rights are under pressure. Then we have Minister Gatis Eglitis from Latvia, not so far away, also a beautiful country here. And he is the Minister of Welfare, and he has a very broad portfolio, which includes all the matters we discuss in the European Union of Equality. And maybe you introduce yourself briefly and explain your portfolio, and then we can start. And then Viktória introduces herself, a bit what she does, and then we go into, we do a little introduction on the Union of Equality from the European perspective, and then we discuss with our two guests, and then with you in the future. But Minister.
Yes, so just briefly about my portfolio. So Minister of Welfare, it's no other place in Europe has such a title, let's say. It's either in Minister of Social Affairs, Minister of Labor Affairs, but my portfolio includes social policy, labor policy, people with disabilities, family, children policies, gender equality, and a number of others. So it's quite a wide portfolio. And before becoming a minister, I was serving in the parliament as a member of parliament in Latvia. I was deputy chairman of the European Affairs Committee, and I was also on the budget.
Thank you, Gatis. Viktória, introduce yourself briefly.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I'm the president of Budapest Pride, and we are the most visible LGBTQ organization in Hungary. And what we focus on besides organizing the Pride March, which was organized the 27th time in Hungary this year, we focus a lot of our efforts on campaigning with other civil society organizations in combating Viktor Orbán's anti-LGBTQ politics. And we also work a lot on supporting LGBTQ communities outside the capital city, and we raise funds for communities in the rural areas, and we help them with trainings and support, so we can amplify their voices and strengthen these self-organizing groups.
Thank you, Viktória. Thank you, Gatis. Well, the Union of Equality, it's the first time that in the European Union we have one commissioner who has the portfolio of equality, and this was the wish of Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. And in one of her guidelines, she says, "I want the Union of Equality." And Commissioner Helena Dalli from Malta is one who is pushing this agenda together with Commission President von der Leyen. And they came up with a certain strategy. We have a gender equality strategy, which was published in 2020. We have an anti-racism action plan, which is very important in Europe. We have a LGBTI equality action plan, and we also have a Roma action plan, and we have a disability strategy. With all these people are belonging to these different communities, they might be vulnerable and at risk of being discriminated. And we still don't have equality. I'll just give you a few numbers. When I start with gender equality, there's still an 11.6% difference between women and men in employment rate. That's a big difference. You also know that in general, women in Europe earn 14% less for the work of equal value. So that's why it's very important to work also towards more gender equality. And there is still a lot of stereotypes. Still 44% of Europeans think that the most important role of women is to take care of the family and of the home. And 43% of Europeans think that the most important role of a man is to earn money. And let's not even talk about violence against women and gender-based violence. So therefore, it's important to have this gender equality action plan, and here the European Union can do something, but the member states have to really do it, and that's why it's important to talk with the minister. When it comes to LGBTI equality, 43% of the LGBTI people felt discriminated still in 2019. Racism is also still a big problem in Europe. Being black in Europe was a study done by the Fundamental Rights Agency, and it's very scary if you read the conclusions of that. So 45% of descendants of North African people really feel and experience discrimination, and I could go on with this number. And then disability also, when you see that 75% of Europeans who are not disabled are in employment. When it comes to disabled people, it's only 50%. And the risk of poverty is also double when you're disabled than when you're not disabled. And also there's a big feeling of discrimination to people with disability. But of course, there's many differences in countries, because Viktória told me, oh, it's so nice to see so many people here in wheelchairs and being out on the street. And because the country or the government and the local authorities, they do things for these people. So maybe I would like to start with the minister and ask him, when the strategy, how do you see these strategies from a national point of view? And because Europe can legislate in certain things, but we have to rely on the member states to make these recommendations possible. So how do you deal with that, and can you tell about the experience you have with these different strategies?
I must say that a lot of these strategies, at least in Latvia and probably some of the neighboring countries, are encouraged more from sort of, I would say, from Europe or from Brussels, for instance. You mentioned the pay gap, gender pay gap, gender-based violence prevention directive, which is now Commission Daily recently proposed, women on boards, and some of these directives, basically, they are very instrumental on a national level to push this agenda further. Because I must say, maybe nationally level, if it was national level, it would take longer for the society, for the culture to change, to accept maybe and overcome stereotypes. Because that's the problem in most of the issues you mentioned. There's a lot of stereotypes from past, for instance, about women, about the role of women, the role of men, which are for generations. And now, of course, we have to overcome them. And also, for instance, as you mentioned, people with colored skin, black skin, also their integration in society. I must say also, in Latvia, probably a black person would not feel very comfortable walking the street. What can be done sort of on a regulation level is one thing, but the other is really change of culture, being welcome, and overcoming this. So what I'm saying is that it's not a proactive or proactive from the national level. I think we sort of we welcome, we receive.
So if I understand you well, you are very happy about the strategies because it helps you as a minister and you as a politician, together with civil society in your country, to change mentalities, to make laws, and to
It helps, exactly, because me as a minister, I have to go to the parliament to get a mandate for my votes, for instance, in the European Council, and all the directives you mentioned. And of course I have to convince our parliamentarians, this is the right thing to do, that yes, this will require certain adjustment in our thinking, in our policies. But so far I've been successful in getting these mandates. I as a minister have supported in the council all of these directives. So yes, you're right. It helps. It helps me that I can also say, well, this is also, let's say, an obligation also from Brussels. But it helps me.
This is very nice because if I follow a bit, I'm very interested in what happens in Hungary, in your country, and often I read from your ministers, oh, this is again an attack from Brussels against Hungary or our values, etc. So maybe a question to you, Viktória, maybe a personal question. Why is equality so important for you, and why did you become an activist, and tell us a bit about your personal fight for equality?
So, I was 9 years old when Hungary joined the European Union. I was born in '95, so I couldn't really grasp the concept of what does it mean. But I remember clearly, and it was like a very heartwarming thing. Like I have two younger sisters. Yeah, at the time I had two younger sisters already, and my parents sat us down at the dinner table and they explained that from now on we will not only be Hungarian citizens, we will also be European citizens. And we will travel very easily, and it will be this big open world when we can visit other countries, we can study there, we can learn there, and I still have like goosebumps that my parents tried to explain it to us, what does it mean, and we felt that okay, this is gonna be like, if we are gonna live a better life than our parents lived, and we're gonna be safer, and there's gonna be a lot of opportunities, and so it's a bit harsh on your face that the reality is not that, and your country is not going in that direction what you imagine as a 9-year-old of you having this like, bright and safe and free future. And I grew up in a very, very small town with like 18,000 people where, for example, segregation of Roma people was just an everyday thing. Like they didn't even try to hide it or try to, act as if there was no racism. In Hungary, like when I went to primary school, we had a separate class for Roma students, and everybody just said it like point blank, like that's the Roma class and the other two is the non-Roma class. And it was just treated as the natural way of life, and when we joined the European Union, of course, the EU found out that this is going on in Hungary, so they had to turn segregation in more subtle forms, like defunding schools where there's like a huge amount of Roma students, so the more wealthier students who tend to be not Roma will go to another schools, so they can create segregated schools together. This is still going on in Hungary, but I remember just a feeling, and maybe you can relate to that because you became politicians when you're so furious and you see these things and you don't even understand why it's happening. And the same was with homophobia in this small town, the same was with sexism. Like I have never seen my father cook a meal in my entire life. And my father and my mother were both teachers and they both had 8-hour jobs, and I have never seen him do the washing machine or anything like that. And I couldn't really like explain what's wrong. I was very angry that something's wrong with the world. So I ended up here. But now it's much better because now I feel that I have to start change things instead of just being angry at everybody who is like hurting other people. Wasn't such an answer.
Very good, very good. The question could go for the both of you. We know equality is under attack. Especially LGBTI rights are being under attack. Women's rights are under attack because of this anti-gender movement, which is very well financed by American evangelicals and also by the Kremlin or by oligarchs close to the Kremlin who want to say that our values are immoral and that women, they want to bring us back to patriarchy. They have this pro-family movement. I saw that your minister, your president visited the Pope, and which is the Pope is nothing against the Pope. The communication around it is also a bit misused, and we feel this. And the law you have in Hungary, this anti-Ajudai law, which is supposed to protect children, but it's really an anti-Ajudai. It's a copycat paste from the Russian anti-Ajudai propaganda law. And how is it? You are the organizer of Budapest Pride. You are an activist. How tough is it to work in an environment like that? And you have no support whatsoever from your government. And you look to Brussels and a bit like the minister said, Brussels gives us incentive and pushes us to change things. Are you disappointed by Brussels? A little bit, I guess, that things are not changing quick enough in Hungary.
Yes, I think I can relate to what you said, like what we experienced in the first 5 or 6 years when we still had like a previous government, not the current Fidesz government, but we were EU members. Like the previous government was also fairly corrupt and very bad, but they were incentivized to follow up with EU recommendations and plans. And like what we as activists usually receive from politicians if we were talking to them about pressing issues that society is not ready for that, we are not there yet. So if there's another actor, in the picture, like the European Union, they will be more likely to change things if there's a political will. But now there is a political will for something completely different. And what is really painful, and these narratives are really like, as you mentioned, a copy from Russia. Like there is this like democratic veto narrative in Russia, maybe you're familiar with it, that the demographic decline is caused by the acceptance of being LGBTQ, because now more people are living in lesbian and gay relationships, so they will not procreate, so we should, hunt them back to the closet, so they will, be in fake heterosexual relationships, or I don't know what's the end game of this, I never really understood, but something like that. And that's what's being elected in Hungary with this like pro-family, protecting children, blah 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 narrative, and painting gay and lesbian people, especially adopting gay and lesbian people as pedophiles, is a very important tool in the hands of the Hungarian government. And it's very dangerous because I think it plays like to the core fear of every parent. And of course, every parent wants their kids to be safe, to be protected, to live a healthy life, and to be happy. And the government is tapping into this very core fear of people and turning it into something very, very ugly. And especially in the current situation, if you allow me to be a bit further from the topic, like the Hungarian economy is crippling. The Hungarian economy is a very, very bad situation. The Hungarian currency is losing its value all the time. So, like everyday things are just getting more expensive. Like now, buying tomatoes is like almost a luxury, almost as a luxury as buying exotic fruits in the department or in the supermarket. We just talked about it with my girlfriend, how the living expenses increased rapidly because of the state of the Hungarian economy. So it's very useful to point fingers to something, and we all know this tactic that if people are really struggling to make ends meet, it's much easier to point to the Jews, the gypsies, the gays, the whatnot, so people can blame somebody or to Brussels. And that's why I think you get these letters from all of our ministers, because the Hungarian government is in like campaigning mode. Like there is no governing mode for maybe 2 years or 3 years. They have these like 4-year campaigns to build up, anger in society and to point fingers at someone, so people will not march on the streets for lower gas prices, for example, but they will attack same-sex couples who hold hands on the street, because their anger is redirected towards minorities against whom they already have a lot of stereotypes and feel a lot of animosity. So it's not an easy thing to do, and it's certainly not helping that our government is getting so much ideological help and financial help from Russia and from the United States fundamentalists. And you would think that now we have a female president, that it's the first female president of Hungary, and you could think that it's a good thing. It's clearly not. Like, she made it obvious that, you know, women must have children, women should not compete with their husbands. It is funny coming from the president of Hungary that women shouldn't be careerists. You know, she's like the Hungarian Swedish Latvia talking about, oh, you shouldn't be too ambitious, but I'm the president of Hungary. She's doing everything in her power to keep women's rights and LGBTQ rights, as they are, or make them even worse.
To the minister question, you mentioned that the politician, you have the feeling that sometimes politicians say society is not ready yet. You are a young politician, you know your society. Do you think society is not ready for more change, for more equality, for more gender equality, for more education equality, for more, what's your take on that?
Well, I think sometimes we need to help the process. For instance, now we have this new directive on how to divide basically time, work-life balance. You know, and in Latvia it was quite a debate, fuss, you know, because the principle is just simple there that men should take a greater burden of daily sort of chores and in raising children. You know? And the principle is simple, that a part of the parental leave cannot be used, say, by a mother, but it has to be taken by a father, 2 months. Otherwise they go, these 2 months are lost. And that created a lot of fuss, because we all know that, at least in Latvia, it's 97% it's women, you know, taking care of the kids during the parental leave. And then, suddenly Brussels is imposing, you know, this new regulation that men should also now be sitting at home, you know, and then taking care of their kids. And to me, that's normal. You know, I spend a lot of time outside Latvia, in Belgium for a long time. I know the Scandinavian culture in terms of father engagement in raising the child, family matters. You know, doing dishes, cooking food, and everything. You know, to me that's normal. And as a minister, you know, I said, you know, that's the way forward. You know, but
maybe Scandinavian women educate their men better.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, of course. But we are probably getting there. But it will take time, and I would say, thank God we have this maybe nudge from Brussels. You know that. And I'm using it again, you know, and it's now in a law. We will not have 2 months, we will have 1 month, but that's a start, you know, so that men also get used to the idea, but they also have to share the burden.
But I also think you have the feeling that I like very much what you say, and you're from the Conservative Party, the EPP, like this. And I think often when you talk equality, people think it's a question between left or right or center or whatever, and it's just about human rights. And you are a politician from the Conservative Party, but you want also to defend human rights. And this is sometimes with you, I don't have that problem. But me as a Social Democrat, or you as an activist, when we defend, for example, women's rights or LGBTI rights, we are. They tell us your ideology. This is an ideology. You're an ideology. And I always say, I'm not an ideology. I'm an identity. We're identities. So we often have this thing that it's. But I'm very happy that I see younger politicians now, and also in the European Parliament, in the EPP, as the intergroup, we have a lot of members from the EPP and from conservative parties, which is very good. You don't see that situation in Hungary, or can we overcome that somewhere? are you hoping also in the Baltics that this can be that you can overcome this ideological debate on equality, because equality is just about human rights and anti-discrimination, that's it, it's nothing extra. We don't give extra rights to anyone.
I will even go further in fighting our the conservatives in Latvia. We have, I would say, we have been very progressive also in other fronts. For instance, civil union law. It was not proposed by liberal parties or center party. The Prime Minister's party was proposed by our party, the Minister of Justice. From a conservative party, we came up with civil union law, and we pushed it to the parliament. And as a result, of course, we lost also a lot of maybe our supporters, you know. But we believe that's the right thing to do. Similarly, with it's not similar maybe on the equality, but like Jewish restitution law. It was an issue for more than 20 years. It was not resolved. You know. We said, no, it has to be resolved. You know, for human reasons and for other reasons, and we did it. So I think I'm quite positive in the sense that also conservative parties can change, and they do change, and they are not all, but they are becoming more open-minded also to issues which are maybe by the book would not belong to this or that ideology.
Nobody has the monopoly of human rights, and this is exactly what you say. And what is interesting also is it needs a lot of political courage sometimes to change. When I discuss with Italians, and they say, "Oh yes, you know, we're so Catholic, you must imagine, yeah, you know, we have traditions, etc." Then I say, well, look, Malta is just a few kilometers off Sicily, very small country. 10 years ago, divorce was even forbidden in Malta. But it was a political courage of a government. They said we will have laws to have total equality between men and women, LGBT rights, transgender law. They have the intersex persons laws, and they are now on the ranking of ILGA Europe. ILGA Europe is the international lesbian, gay, and LGBT association. They are the country number one on these rights. So it's all about political will, as you say.
Which is a bit controversial, if I can add, because abortion is still illegal.
Yeah, I know.
So that's like work to do.
They are starting to work on it now, and I hope, and we have to push them from Brussels too. In abortion, they are the word. Yeah, that's totally right. But intersectional discrimination. This is also something. Intersectional discrimination. When we have texts from the council, from the ministers, often the word gender or intersectional discrimination, we have to. This word is banned in the language of the council because Hungary and Poland, when they see these words, they get very sensitive. I'll give you an example. Probably you were at the summit, Porto Summit for Social Rights and Minister of Welfare. They wanted to have a sentence, an article on gender equality, and it ended up as equality between men and women, which is already very good, but gender equality is more than equality between men and women. But in order to have Poland and Hungary on board, this is something we debated in a former session where we also talked about unanimity, but I'm not going to European issues now. But this is really also a problem, intersectional discrimination. You can have you experienced intersectional discrimination?
Well, in terms of being a woman and being also queer, yes, of course. I would say that it's you know, as a woman, as an activist, it's like the everyday little things that I don't know if we will overcome in our lifetime, but we can work on it, and we have to work on it. Like when I had a new colleague who's a guy, and he was only working with us for 1 or 2 months, and I was working there for like 6 years. And we go to a reception or go to somewhere, everybody always goes to him, and everybody, you know, introduces themselves to him first. Like there's these like small things that it's harder to get into conversations, it's harder to get people to remember you or to contact you, because they think that you're somebody's assistant or you're not in the position you actually are in. In terms of being in a same-sex relationship, I think it's, as in probably many countries, it's a tiny bit safer to be in a lesbian relationship and than to be in a gay relationship and be out in public. Me, with my girlfriend right there, usually get comments which are more like objectifying and sexualizing on the street or on public transportation or something like that, and gay couples tend to experience more direct violence towards them. But I think that goes back to the root of patriarchy, that like lesbian couples are more sexualized and gay couples experience more like aggressiveness or violence towards them. But back to this like gender issue you raised, I think this is like a core principle of the Hungarian government, and I think it's pretty interesting. Like their view on the world is that domestic violence doesn't exist. Like violence in the concept of family is not a thing. Whenever there's a case of domestic violence, it's just like an unfortunate relationship problem. It's like a unique case that doesn't really have like a social impact, or it's not something that we have to deal on a social level. These are just individual cases where, I don't know, maybe the husband was drunk or like something there, but it doesn't exist as an overall problem. At the same time, every week a Hungarian woman is killed by their partner or their former partner, so it's a pretty big thing in Hungary, but they tend to downplay it into individual cases. So this is the first part of what I think the Hungarian government, problematizes with the concept of gender, that, you say that there is an issue with traditional gender roles and maybe we should work on that to be better. And there's this, they're very like fixated on like traditional masculinity, and it's, of course it is ingrained in Hungarian society, of course it is like, like men go to football matches and women stay at home with their kids and cook the dinner for the men to arrive home and eat. But for example, when I was going to school, which was, I graduated from high school 8 years ago, so not that long ago, we haven't really learned much about gender equality, but there were like some sentences here and there over the course of 12 years. And since that, the Hungarian government formalized education, and now we have state-mandated textbooks. The teachers cannot choose textbooks, they cannot really choose methods, everything is state-mandated, and they deleted everything from the textbooks that's about gender equality or something like that, and they reintroduced new phrases. For example, if you're a 9-year-old, you will do an exercise at, I think, Hungarian class or something like that, where there are hobbies, and you have to pick, is it a male hobby or a female hobby? And of course, they are very stereotypical, their topics, and the answer is like, women like to gossip and men like to talk about economics and politics. And this is what you learn in Hungary if you're 9 years old. So I think it's crucial for them to reinstate these very harmful traditional gender roles into society. And I think they are also afraid that gender equality can be interpreted as protection of certain gender identities, because the Hungarian government had actually banned legal gender recognition for trans and intersex persons, which was allowed for 20 years. So now trans persons in Russia or Kyrgyzstan have better access to change their name and gender legally than Hungarians. And that's why they decided not to ratify the Istanbul Convention, and then they left the Istanbul Convention altogether, because the main narrative was that the Istanbul Convention is forcing gender ideology on Hungary. And I think these are the two aspects of gender ideology that they try to paint as the enemy of Hungarian values and traditional family values.
I think we've spoken enough here. It's the room now who has the right, who has the obligation, I hope, to put some questions about the union of equality, about human rights, about anti-discrimination measures, and good practices from I don't know where you come from. Is there somebody who would like to make a comment or ask a question? Yes, I said with him, and then Charlotte. Sir.
What if you try to solve some of the gender equality problems is more really for men, such as like a lot of men in the lowest part of society, a lot of men more often go to jail, and problems like that. That was the focus of the European Union.
I personally don't think that when you talk about gender equality, it's focus a lot on women's rights than on girls' rights, but that does not mean that we should not forget all rights and work with men. For example, in my country, Luxembourg, we have associations which support also men problem when they have problems, and when it comes to gender violence, of course, most of the victims are women, but there's also men who are victims, and we also know that, and this is not hidden. It's not that we say it's only women who have problems, and there is specific, in medicine, we have to do campaigns for. There is not only campaigns for breast cancer for women, there is campaigns for specific cancers where men are more attracted to. So some member states have really good policies targeted also towards the health of men, etc. But the fact that more men are in prison, maybe there's also because in our stereotype and in education, it's still the violence. As a man, you have to be violent, and it's not, if you're not a violent man, you're not a man, etc. So all these stereotypes help also some of these problems that men are dealing with, because they're the consequence of something. You have to drink plenty beers when you go out, you know. Sorry, if a group of guys go to Mallorca and or to I don't know where, and they come back in the bar and they say, hey, I had 5 girls, I was drunk every night. They are hero. A woman who said, I was a month in Spain, I had sex with you, she's immediately seen as a sorry to say, slut, or yeah. And this is also something we have to work on. So it's not always against that when you promote gender equality and more women's rights, it doesn't go against any rights of men. Nobody wants extra rights. We want the same rights. The same is with LGBTI rights. Nobody says gay or lesbians or trans have to have more rights than a cisgender person. No, it's about the same rights, and it's about anti-discrimination.
Yeah, but I think also, Marc, I think it was your example, is about parental leaves. I think this in Hungarian society, it is like very well known that, for example, there are a lot of people who like grew up without their father, and their parents were divorced, but for example, like my girlfriend hasn't really spent time with her father until the age of 5, because he was just not there at all. And this also, like, you don't want your kids to grow up that way, and also this also hurts men because they don't have like a personal, intimate relationship with their kids as much as you know. So I think this narrative like creates empathy, but on the other hand, in Hungary at least, it's not the problem of, I don't know, we cannot come up with clever ads or whatnot. It's a problem that 80% of media outlets are owned by oligarchs. So even if you have the best curated messages and you focus group tested it and you did everything, you simply, most of the time you cannot get through and cannot get to the people because you cannot get to those media platforms which are state operated or owned by the oligarchs. Most of the billboard places are owned by oligarchs, so you have basically social media left where you can advertise if you have the money, but it is for like campaigns about like social issues, it is extremely hard to get any airtime because there's so little independent media left that everybody is competing for the same teeny tiny amount of media coverage, and it's a big stress. I think that's the core of the problem.
Would you like to react to that section?
Yes.
And then we come back to you.
Very short.
Or maybe you want to add to it?
My question was not about, not focused on men, what would that be more important in Hungary to come and see the problem? Also, just to change the big amount of men, change the big amount of men in the low-power society, the alcohol and drug abuse often seen by men.
Yes, actually, when in general, when you talk about gender-based sort of stereotypes, you usually talk about women and also about the risks and so on. But I think actually men, and that's my hypothesis, actually they suffer maybe even more from these gender-based gender-based stereotypes. Because in my country, Latvia, for instance, women, they live on average 10 years more than men. And why? Because there are all these silly stereotypes as to what man is, drinking, eating big portions of pork, driving a car recklessly, jumping in a pool, not knowing what is underneath, all these, not going to doctor, for a long time, only when things are already too late, they show off the doctor. So these gender-based stereotypes, at least in my country, I see they're actually hurting men much more. Also, like prisons, more men are in prison. So.
Good question.
I was just wondering, in Hungary we see clear violations of European fundamental rights. Are we doing enough European level? What could be done? Is there anything we can do?
There's different instruments we can do. We have, for example, Article 7. It's a very complicated procedure, but there's always Poland who blocks it when it comes about Hungary, and Hungary who blocks it when it's about Poland. So we're not advancing on that. But finally, the Commission has now finally launched some serious infringement procedures against Hungary. Maybe go into detail with that, but we hope that they this time really be stricter. And then we also have to be a critical justice.
So one thing that you mentioned is like it's a procedural thing. Like if two member states can block everything and like stop things from working, then you have to fix the process. I think, and like new thing, we have to come up with new things to make the rules and instruments that are already there to like actually work and have an effect. That's one thing. And the other thing is the rule of law conditionality issue. There is now this rule of law conditionality that ties EU money to following the rule of law, to put it very simply, which Hungary hasn't been doing for the past 12 years. And I think it took a very, very long time for the EU to actually act on it. And like billions of EU funds were stolen by the government and his values. Like they're building castles, like that level of corruption and money is being stolen. So I think it's a good thing that the rule of law conditionality is there. I think another aspect that could be looked at is for the EU not to only look at if the EU money is being stolen or not. Of course, that's a very important priority, because I think that the whole system of Orbán is being tied together by money. And until the point that it's worth it for the oligarchs and for everybody to stay in it, they will stay in it. But I think EU institutions should be also looking at how the money is being spent and if the way the money is being spent is complying with EU values and regulations. Just like one example, there was an EU fund to renovate very poorly built houses of Roma families who live in segregated areas. And they won the grant and they started renovating the houses, and then they kicked out the families and they tried to rent the homes to have more wealthy families to live in the homes. So like these types of violations and also a lot of EU money is going to anti-LGBT organizations through these like very complicated money channels. It's not direct, it's like sub-granting and contracts here and there. I think a lot of things could be fixed that way. And about infringement processes. So we have two infringement processes going against Hungary. One about the censorship law, but so there's a law that censors LGBTQ content from media and from schools, and the infringement process is only about the media part. I think there should be another one about school censorship and reinstated that children should learn about the fact that LGBTQ people are on the earth and we exist. And there is another infringement process about LGBTQ inclusive children's book being labeled as non-traditional something. But we have two other anti-LGBTQ laws that hasn't kick-started an infringement process, and I think that's a big mistake. One is the ban on legal gender recognition, and we all thought that that's gonna be the first thing to be infringed because like it's clear like employment discrimination if you have to go to a job interview and you have to put your old name on your CV, and you have to explain at the job interview why is your name in your ID is different than what's going on with you. You have to out yourself all the time. And the other law that should be in an infringement procedure is it's like a de facto ban on adoption. So gay and lesbian people could only adopt in Hungary as individuals, and so they cannot really write a law saying that gay and lesbian people cannot adopt. Yeah, that wouldn't fly in the EU. So what they did is they came up with a procedure that instead of Child Protection Services, it is now the Minister for Family Affairs' job to decide if you can adopt if you are not married. So this way you can exclude gay and lesbian people from adoption without writing it down, and I think these two could be put in an infringement procedure, and then years and years later brought to the court of Strasbourg or Luxembourg, and then we could have something. But I think that's the only hope of Hungarians, because the courts are so corrupt that European courts can fix things, even if they are bureaucratic and slow, but at the end maybe something could come out of it.
Do you experience in council meetings this opposition of some countries or some colleagues? I wouldn't say countries, some governments, because it's not the countries, it's not, there's elections in Italy and there's a nationalist candidate who's very up in polls, so sometimes we do the statements, it's the Eastern European countries who are anti-this or anti-that. No, it's this right-wing, far-right populists who are like that. Do you experience this in the council? That would be my last question. Or is there another question in the room? No? And then we can...
Well, certain countries behave in a way. Your country is one of those. I think part of the problem probably is that a lot of these narratives as to what is family values, what is right or wrong, what is accepted in the society, what not, have been hijacked. You mentioned previously by Kremlin. Kremlin has been very, very active in many countries in supporting the NGOs, who are for hardcore conservative values, who are against sort of invasion of, as you mentioned before, non-traditional, let's say, stereotypical values. So Kremlin, in general, in collaboration with some governments, of course, have been messing a lot, and they have the resources, and they are using it a lot. That's the question about the resilience of any society. Nordic countries never have a problem with this. They're resilient. They know their value system. They know what's right and wrong. Some countries still, need some time to advance their development.
Thank you very much. I just would like to conclude with saying that I was very happy to hear from the Minister that the unit of equality that comes out from Brussels is very helpful in national politics and also local politics. And also very happy that Viktória hasn't given up on hope on what Europe can do to get more equality. It's a difficult case, but you said it's a lot of procedures. Yes, we need to change some procedures to get to the outcome of the future of Europe, where the most wanted people was to get rid of the unity, because too many things have been blocked by one or two countries. So we hope for a better future. In your country, don't give up fighting. We need people like you. And civil society is the natural ally of politicians. So this is always my attitude. Sometimes they're very critical, they attack us very much, but we shouldn't be afraid of them, and they shouldn't be afraid of being frank, and we have to build bridges, and then we can even make this union of equality the more perfect union of equality in the next years. So thank you very much. Thank you, Minister Gatis, and thank you, Viktória, for coming all the way from Budapest and have a good time in this beautiful country, Denmark, and this beautiful area. I don't know how you call the area around Mariager. The Mariager Fjord. Enjoy the lovely people and the lovely nature here. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for having us.